Any moral wins in Michigan State's loss at Purdue? No, personally, I don't think so. But hey, maybe you're different out there. And also, in terms of real wins, we're going to talk about that Michigan State hockey team over there getting their first ever Big Ten title. Let's go.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. Spartan friends, Spartan family, Locked On Spartans listeners, thank you all so much for tuning in and chewing up some of your weekend with us here at Locked On Spartans, or the start of your week, whenever you're listening to this. Really do appreciate you. Please rate, review, subscribe, comment below on YouTube, or really just do anything that makes you happy, because we're just trying to put a smile on your face here after the basketball weekend. But then again, we are going to talk about this hockey team, and that's going to put a smile on everyone's face here. So let's just get into the show here. Michigan State 74, Purdue 80. And if you can't already tell by now, I'm clearly not even 10% as angry as I was last week after the Ohio State game or the Iowa game. Now, am I not as furious as I was last week because it's just all been beaten out of me and all enthusiasm is lost with Michigan State? You can make the argument that that's the case, but no, deep down inside, of course I got a little bit of faith that they can make some noise here in March because I'm a sucker. But no, mostly because, guys, it's Purdue. All right, they are a fantastic team. They're a really good team, especially when they play the way they did on Saturday night. And Michigan State, I think, is just done winning at Mackey for the foreseeable future. So, sure, they lose by 6 points. They cover the spread. They competed against them, and we can take some good takeaways from here. But excuse me for being a Debbie Downer or Mr. Eeyore or Johnny Raincloud over here, whatever you want to call me. Not really jumping for joy and skipping around the living room after that game saying, hey, that's a loss, but the team looked pretty good. Now, this is an interesting psychological experiment, I think, because if they won last week, if they beat Iowa as 10-point favorites, if they beat Ohio State as 10-point favorites at home, like they should have, not really tough games. We've lamented about that many a time last week. I think I'm actually pretty happy today. You know, because that was a gritty performance by our Spartans. You did come close to beating Purdue without your point guard essentially playing good whatsoever. But since you do lose those last two games, it's very disingenuous for me to get on here and say, hey, you know what? That's fine. Because, look, if they won last week twice, we're talking about how great of a win that was. We're talking about, hey, you know what? Maybe instead of right now talking how close we are to being off the bubble, we're talking about, I know we just lost against Purdue, but dang, guys, maybe that 6th seed is in sight. And then we're also talking about the emergence of Xavier Booker being a game changer for this season. But since this is a 3-game losing streak now, it's kind of just more of the same. You can't take a moral victory when you actually need some real-life victories that actually count in your win-loss record these days. And, well, it's just more of the same because the backcourt, the backcourt with 2 seniors on it, continues to struggle. They had a tough go at it against Ohio State, not really a shining moment against Iowa. 8 of 28 shooting combined from Tyson and AJ Hoggard on Saturday night against Purdue. Okay, it's really starting to just kind of set in that, okay, no, this is just it. Or, hey, maybe it has set in for you a few weeks ago, but still, as these losses keep mounting, it's hard for me to find as a moral victory in any of this. Anyway, story of the game. Sure, Zack Edey, he had 30 points, 100 rebounds. He had a Zack Edey game. The story of this game, though, was the point guards. AJ Hoggard versus Braden Smith. All right? Braden Smith, yeah, that guy can shine under the bright lights. 23 points on 8 of 11 shooting, 9 rebounds for this guard, and also 3 assists. And AJ Hoggard, The guy who was miffed that he was left off the Bob Cousy Award watch list in the preseason, he showed up to the occasion with 8 points on 3 of 13 shooting, including 0 of 7 shooting in the first half. Missed a few layups because apparently those are equivalent to half-court shots now for him. It's odds are they're not going to go in these days. And 4 assists, but I know the AJ Hoggard defenders will be upset at me saying that, so I'll throw them a bone right now. Hey, the 3 steals were pretty cool, and he only had 1 turnover, so good on you there. Although I would argue that those 4 or 5 missed layups, that might as well be a turnover as far as I'm concerned. And for good measure, as far as seeing the point guard battle be that lopsided right in front of your eyes, if that wasn't, bad enough to watch on Saturday night, how about just the fact that, hey, great, another reminder that we kind of recruited the wrong lawyer here to play at Michigan State, because Fletcher Lawyer, 15 points on 4 of 6 shooting from 3. Now, that's just hilarious for our Spartan fans, because Fletcher hasn't hit 4 threes in a game in 11 games. And actually, as of late, over his last 8 games, he's only hit 5 3-pointers combined in the 8 games leading up to this one. So that's like some good Michigan State medicine to get you on the right side of your shooting issues. Glad he shored those up against Michigan State. That was a backbreaker against our Spartans. Now, speaking of backbreakers, or I guess everything might be broken on this man here, it's another ongoing dialogue of Tyson Walker. And I'm not saying that Tyson Walker played horrible or that, oh my God, he's no good whatsoever. But it's another example of clearly he is not the Tyson Walker that we remember him as, or that we need him to be as we creep further and further into March. Now, Graham Couch brought this up when we talked with him before the weekend, that he just has one 20-plus point game in the last 11 games. And if you want a smaller sample size, more recent sample size, a more alarming sample size, in my opinion, over the last 5 games, he's shot over 40% just once in the last 5 games. 5 of 15 today. Look, he had a fine start to the game. I believe he went into halftime with 12 points. But yeah, pressing a little bit, probably because he's looking at who else is in the backcourt here. Who else can help me? Oh, no one? Well, okay, I'm going to just put on my superhero cape and try to do everything possible with every single body part injured on me. So that's how the Tyson Walker thing is going. Things are getting, well, just not better. So great. Woohoo. Again, we're not saying that, hey, you know what? He's trash. He's useless. It's just not the Tyson Walker that this team needs him to be, quite frankly, because, well, who else is going to pick up the slack for him? Now, it's not going to be all Debbie Downer here. No. I guess you could call this moral victories. I just call it, just trying to be somewhat optimistic about this game. And after, 2 weeks of just being so hard on this team, rightfully so. That's what happens when you go 0-3 with 2 home losses. But I digress. Some bright spots of the game. All right, Trey Hallman. I thought he had a fine game off the bench. 8 points. All right, really came in as a good spark plug in the first half, or I guess they didn't really need a spark plug, but kept the energy going to start that game as Michigan State came out to an early lead in this contest. So we said the other day that, hey, looks like Trey has maybe hit a sophomore wall, but it was nice to see him have that game at a tough road atmosphere, because we've also seen him have some not so great games on the road throughout the whole season. So really, really optimistic performance from Trey Hallman there. Xavier Booker, of course, the man of the month, seemingly. 11 points. He had a game high plus 11. I know plus minus, people are very conflicted over whether they want to believe that or put a lot of stock in that. For sake of conversation, plus 11 in 12 minutes of work. That was a high, not just for Michigan State, but for both teams. We're going to shout out _Zinger on Twitter, also more affectionately known as Andy HRCMB on YouTube, a Spartan god. He puts out great analytical stats. He breaks up all the lineups, gives the plus minuses for them, the average points per possession on offense and defense, yada, yada, yada. So go follow him on Twitter, _Zinger. Off this graph that he posted, Xavier Booker, not just 11 points in 12 minutes, but in every single lineup he was in, that lineup posted a positive rating. Not bad. The worst lineup he was a part of was just for a handful of possessions, and that was a 0. Every other one, he was in 3 other lineups. He was a plus. He was a positive. So, hey, as we roar into March here, maybe you could talk yourself into, hey, you know what? How about this X factor, no pun intended, coming off the bench. Also, Carson Cooper. Talk about plus minus. I know that didn't look pretty for him, but hey, just with the eye test and what we've seen the last few games from him too, a 6-point performance and 5 rebounds in 16 minutes. is just about as good of a game as you're going to get from Carson Cooper, especially against Zack Edey. And we'll talk about Zack Edey here to start the next segment. But first, just need to talk your ears off about Nissan. That is right. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Well, our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. Like, for example, guys, take the 2024 Nissan Rogue. Perfect for city drives and great escapes. It has class-exclusive Google built in, so you're always updating for calls on almost everything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch high-definition touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. Or hop in the 2024 Nissan Armada. It will change what you expect from a full-size SUV. Just picture a rugged 4x4 SUV that could seat up to 8 in first-class luxury and style. So take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure at nissanusa.com. All right, let's get back into the mix here, and we'll talk about this game and Zack Edey. We'll blend the two topics of conversation, and just for the 6 Purdue fans that might be watching this show, let me get this out of the way right now. Zack Edey is a very good player, okay? I'm not in the camp that, oh, he's just tall, and that's the only reason he does things. In the same breath, I will say this. I don't necessarily, feel the need to take my shirt off and wave it around and celebrate that, this guy has 30 points and 11 rebounds. Because if you're 7'4", like that is just what you should be doing on a basketball court. It's kind of like the Aaron Henry quote from a few years ago. You don't applaud a fish for swimming. This guy has a substantial advantage in basketball. So yes, it's two things. One, he is gifted. He's not this big, gumpy loaf of a man. No, he is actually coordinated. He can shoot. He plays good basketball, but also like that is what the expectation should be for someone of his size and stature. So with that said, okay, I just throw a little bone to Purdue fans there. And look, I'm not even going to throw a disclaimer in front of this next topic right now because there's no way to talk about this without coming off as some salty Spartan or salty Buckeye or salty Hoosier, whoever Purdue's playing. Whenever they complain about this, they're just always seen as bitter or disgusted or just angry. Like, no, this is a legitimate dialogue of how Zack Edey is called during these games. I've never seen anything like it, where it is the reverse Shaquille O'Neal treatment. And what I mean by that is decades ago, I believe it was Phil Jackson was harping on this when he was coaching Shaq, is that Shaq was just getting mauled by people. And since he was so big, larger than everyone else, refs just have this predetermined bias that, oh, since he's so big, he can handle it. We're not going to call these fouls. And on the other end, since he's so big and everything he does could possibly be a foul, he was called for a lot of fouls too. This is the hardest overcorrection to that I could ever possibly imagine because Zack Edey has not fouled out in 2 years. Now, I'm not calling him a thug. I'm not calling him this hard player that is just an enforcer out there and that he should be called for a bunch of fouls. But wow, to play the center position at roughly 35 minutes per night and not just never foul out in the last 2 years, but also just rack up 4 fouls twice in the last 2 years of Big Ten play. Something is up here. And sure, we could do the argument of like, oh no, like he just plays a really clean game, yada, yada. Okay, so do a lot of other teams around him, like Michigan State, for example. Tell me why he shot 20 free throws to Michigan State's 17, and yet he's only called for, I believe it was 3 fouls the other night. All right, there is no way. There is just no way that the way he plays defense is that much different than how other teams play defense around him. So yes, again, Purdue, great team, one of the best teams in the country. No, you did not get here just because Zack Edey can do whatever he wants on the court. But it helps a little bit. Let's have an honest discussion about that. So yes, that's another storyline coming out of the game. Michigan State shot 17 free throws. Purdue, one player shot 20 free throws. And yes, we are kind of getting a little sick of it. Were some of them fouls? Absolutely. Certainly. But when Malik Hall's standing there, arms up, and then Zack Edey goes under him and then just starts flailing around like he's a used car sales blow up, and then Malik gets the foul called on him, you're wondering how we got here in Big Ten officiating. Again, I know Big Ten officiating is horrible. It's benefited Michigan State throughout the whole season. It's gone against Michigan State the whole season. It's a horrible product. But wow, we just have to even make the game easier for the 7'4" guy. I don't know. That I'll end the salty takes right there, but just had to bring that up because that is certainly a storyline, I guess not just for this game, but the whole season too. Now we're going to get to 2 quotes from Tom Izzo after this game before talking about this hockey team to end things. This comes from Kyle Lawson of MLive, and he got this quote from Tom Izzo in the post-game press conference. Quote, "I've got a good basketball team. I'm not saying it's great, it's good. We just can't make these little mistakes, and our seniors have to play better. They just do. I've got to coach better. They've got to play better. That's the bottom line." I don't know if I necessarily believe that, that you got a good basketball team. And look, maybe I'm just being way too negative, right? Because if you look at the computers, there is no team that gets more love in comparison to what their record is than Michigan State as it pertains to the computers, the Ken Poms of the world, the Bart Torviks of the world, because Michigan State still squarely in, like, I believe it's the top 35 last I checked on these sites. So it is maybe a little too negative on my part to say, like, no, I don't think you have a good team. I'm sorry. Did I say top 35 on Bart Torvik? They're top 20 still, even though they keep losing these games. I just do not get it sometimes. Anyway, here's why I think that quote might not be hitting the mark here. And that's good that Tom believes it, because above anyone else, the only person that matters is Tom and the rest of the players. But he points out we can't keep making these little mistakes. That's just kind of what you've been doing the whole season. And then the next line, and our seniors have to play better. What if I told you that the seniors not playing better is not like a small blip on the radar, but actually a continuation of what's been going on all season, whether that's from your starting center, whether that's from your point guard, that it's very hard to find a game this season where he's played 2 good halves in the same afternoon of basketball. Hey, there are some games where he plays really good in the second half, and then some games where he plays great in the first half and then kind of snoozes in the second half. And then, well, we just talked about Tyson Walker too, who is ailing no less than 15 different injuries. I get that we can go good to great here if the seniors start playing a little better. What makes us think that that's just going to happen, though? That's kind of where I have a little bit of pause. Again, hey, maybe I'm just too sad and mopey about this team. And if you think much higher about this team, I envy you. I truly do. Now let's get to the second quote here. This from Chris Solari of the Free Press. He got this from the post-game press conference as well. Izzo, quote, "I was pleased that we competed. I think if we'd had done that in the last 2 weeks, we would have won 3 more games, and that's my fault. That falls on me." And then goes on to say, adds that he thinks MSU is in a better place after a performance like this. He thinks will help moving forward. You know what? Again, the only people that matter here is Tom, the coaches, and the players. If they can take what we'll call, for lack of a better term, moral victories from this game, that's awesome. That's fantastic. I, as the curmudgeon-y fan, and maybe you too, because I saw a lot of the sentiment online as well, that quote almost makes me a little just more upset, right? Is that, hey, you know what? If we just competed a little harder the last 2 weeks, we would have won those games, and that falls on me. Like, how are we this late into the season, those games happening in late February, and we have a senior-laden team with a Hall of Fame head coach struggling to, quote-unquote, compete a little bit more in the last 2 weeks? I know that I am just crying a river way too hard over games that happened a week ago. But man, when a quote like that pops up again and we're bringing back the last 2 games and we're just pointing to, oh, we needed to compete a little bit more, and that I'm happy our guys competed tonight in a 6-point loss. Wow, man, this used to be a once proud program. Why couldn't we competed in late February games to begin with? And why are we just getting up here and applauding that we competed well in a 6-point loss? I don't know. Again, just about had it. So anyway, we're going to switch sports here. I know it took us way too long to get to this next team, but we're going to talk hockey here in a little bit. First, just need to talk your ear off about FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. Folks, get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That is $150 if your team wins. You get bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and so much more. Or hey, if the NBA isn't for you, mosey on over to the NCAA prop bets. Because hey, Michigan State right now, despite all the buildings burning around us, 16-1 to make the Final Four. Not too shabby, okay? That's a $5 bet, and that would win you $60 should our Spartans make the Final Four. So go ahead, check their whole menu of props for basketball, for football, for baseball coming up over at FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. It's FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Now let's head on over to the ice here because on Saturday, Michigan State lost 4-1 against Wisconsin, but who could possibly care about that? The only thing that mattered was Friday night. If the Spartans got 3 points, well, they win the outright Big Ten regular season championship. And would you look at that with the score of 5-2? Our Spartans, of course, got it done. Now, of course, the Big Ten Network doesn't want us to talk about this, or they don't even want us to acknowledge this because, hey, if we could just stash the Big Ten regular season championship game on our little app that hardly works, we're just going to do that. But hey, you know what? We are going to talk about this game and this team finally. As you guys already know, first ever Big Ten title for Michigan State. Now, the Big Ten's only been around for a handful of years, right? So let's zoom it out even further. This is their first conference regular season title since 2000-2001 when they won the CCHA. It has been a hot minute since they have won a regular season conference title. Now, stars of the game on Friday night. We got to go to the guy between the pipes, Trey Augustine. 44 saves. I'll say that one more time. 44 saves. That ties his career high. That is his fourth 40-plus save game of the year. Of course, played for Team USA and World Juniors earlier this year, and you can see why. You can see why the fine folks over at USA Hockey wanted this guy protecting the net. Now, Wisconsin came out like bats out of hell in the first period. Trey Augustine faced 19 shots in the first period compared to Michigan State's 7 shots in the first period. It was an onslaught. He also had a save on a shorthanded breakaway from Wisconsin, and there was a massive moment in the middle of this game. Wisconsin was on a 5-minute major power play. All right, that is essentially shoot until you miss. Even if you score, it's still a 5-on-4 man advantage. Trey Augustine just let up 1 goal in that 5-minute power play. Just fantastic work for him. Now, for the rest of the skaters, the rest of the stars of this game, Reed Lebster, 1 goal, 2 assists, also had the game winner. He scored the 3rd goal with 7 minutes and change to go. A beautiful left to right in front of the crease, outweighted the goalie, slid it right between his 5-hole for the 3-2 lead. Now, Artem Lezhnov, goal and assist, and Tiernan Shouty, goal and assist as well. Of course, they tacked on those last 2 goals 4 and 5 late in the game, as Wisconsin went to an empty net in the last 2 minutes. But, that is a nice game to hit the road to Kohl Center to face a team that was also going for the Big Ten championship and beating them, because we talked with Jeremy Dewar of Spartans Illustrated, who will be on the show tomorrow to talk more about hockey. Wisconsin's a very defensive-oriented team. All right, to hang up 5 goals. I mean, yes, 2 of them were empty net, but let's call it 3 goals on their home ice. Not too shabby. So now what? Now what for Michigan State? What's next? Well, they get a nice break here. They have a bye until March 16th in the Big Ten tournament, which Michigan State will, of course, host at Munn Ice Arena, and they're going to face the winner of Notre Dame and Michigan. Now, Notre Dame and Michigan, they'll be facing off the weekend prior in a best-of-3 series, but the semifinals and finals in the Big Ten tournament are just 1-game elimination. Riddle me that, why the first few games are best of 3, and then the semis and the finals are just 1 game, but I digress. That's what we have next. But, oh, man, just want you all to imagine Big Ten tournament hockey, Spartans versus Wolverines at Munn Ice Arena. That might be the hottest ticket that you'll see in town for this scholastic year at Michigan State. That is going to be an electric game, and hopefully, hey, maybe we'll even get lucky and see this game on Big Ten Network, like an actual standard cable channel that wants to promote their teams and their sports. Really just mix it up here. Anyway, we have to give a tip of the cap to the man that's in charge of this whole thing, not just Adam Nightingale, okay? Clearly, he should get his flowers for turning this all around as fast as he has in East Lansing. But even the guy higher up than that, Alan Haller, who made the trip to Madison to watch this as well. Now, this is a tweet from Chris Vanini of The Athletic, and this is just going to set the table here for the rest of the show, just really giving all sorts of flowers to Alan Haller. So the tweet reads, every coaching hire made by MSU Athletic Director Alan Haller so far. Adam Nightingale in hockey, Big Ten champs. Harry Jadoon, men's tennis coach. They are 13-1, ranked in the top 15 in the country right now. Robin Freilich, most wins since 2016. And guys, I also looked at the women's bracketology over the weekend. Michigan State is a 7 seed right now. And that is just wildly impressive that Robin Freilich has turned it around that quick from the mediocrity that Michigan State women's hoops was in, just on the surface. But you look at all the injuries MSU women's hoops has sustained, there is no reason Michigan State women's basketball should be seated this highly in bracketology. But man, Robin Freilich is just churning the program over that quick. Leah Johnson, volleyball coach, first winning season since 2018. And of course, Jonathan Smith, that's going to be a wait and see thing. But hey, if you ask me, if you ask a lot of State fans out there, that's a really nice hire. And just the way it was done by Alan Haller, too. Getting it done almost immediately at the end of the regular season. Doing it in secrecy so that no one could poach. No one can come over the top of Michigan State. It was just a brilliantly run coaching search for Jonathan Smith. So, the ball hasn't even kicked off on the season. But just the way that was done and the guy they got, I mean, that's already as good of a grade as you can possibly get right there. Now, Twitter user Steven, he added also to Chris Vanini's tweet that Sharonda McDonald-Kelly, the softball coach, was also hired by Alan Haller. That'll be a wait-and-see thing. That's a program that needs some rebuilding, so we're going to, wait a few years on that grade, but still, obviously a change was needed there. And then there's some other coaches, too, in the Olympic realm that we just wanted to point out, too. Jeff Hosler. Okay, the women's soccer coach, he was technically a Bill Beekman hire, but Alan Haller, hey, he was in the athletic department for that one. His name was on the press release for that hire too, and the women's soccer team is obviously a wagon. Lisa Bresnow, she was the person in waiting for cross country. She's the head of the whole thing with cross country, who just won back-to-back Big Ten titles. That was, again, made under Bill Beekman, and that was kind of a, coach in waiting. But still, hey, things are looking good. And to point out one more Olympic sport. Now, Alan Haller didn't hire this person, and he's been here for quite a while, but still, this is just to speak on all of the non-revenue sports at Michigan State. Mike Rowe and the gymnastics team, number 8 in the country. So, yes, I know that I'm bashing my head against the wall for men's basketball. We drove ourselves into an insane asylum over the fall over this football team, but everywhere else is looking good. And I know that might not even speak to you because you only care about those two sports. I completely get it. But when we look at the athletic director and you see those hires and the instant impact they're making, that shows competence. That shows faith in, hey, maybe this Jonathan Smith thing can work. And also, whenever Tom Izzo steps away, and yes, I am one to think that Tom Izzo will kind of just make that hire himself. But let's say that Alan Haller is going to have a big influence in it too. Like that's got to give you some positive vibes right here. So all things considered, Alan Haller, job very, very well done. Now we're going to end this here podcast with one mailbag question. This is from Rick. My guy, Rick. Love you, Rick. You are the best. So he says, great analysis and insight with Graham Couch. I'm not supporting the kidney punch, but if it should happen, well, so that kidney punch reference was, it was kind of how to defend Zack Edey. We were mostly joking about that. Anyway, he writes in, what other big name in sports announcing or former players would you consider on the show? Will Tieneman, Scott Skiles, Xavier Tillman, go green. Now I have one that's a sports announcer and one that's a former player. The announcer that I would love to have on the show, more like second place isn't even close, is Bill Raftery. That would be dynamite to have Big Onions Bill on this show. Because, look, when I'm thinking of guests, I'm thinking, okay, who can have great stories? Who has ties to Michigan State? I know Bill and Tom have had many conversations. I hear nothing but outstanding stories about Bill Raftery, so that would be an awesome one to have on the show. And as far as former players, I'm thinking charismatic. I'm thinking stories. I'm thinking insight. I'm thinking just a fun guest. I'm thinking Draymond Green. Like, that guy would be a hoot and a half to have on the show. So if I had 2 wishes for guests, one has to be a former announcer, it's Bill Raftery, and then a former player, it's Draymond Green. So there we go. Folks, we will be back tomorrow. You already know it's Locked On Spartans. We do this 5 days a week. Now go enjoy the rest of your day. Love you all. Go Green.